Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back to another English lesson. Okay, so today we're going to look at this wonderful, lovely extract from this beautiful book called Poonachi. And even before I begin talking about this passage that is there in front of our screens, even before we start looking at the questions, I did first of all like you to understand what this book is basically about. Because if you're looking at these important books, these passages coming out from these important books, if you don't know the background, if you don't know what's happening in these novels, if you don't know what these novels are about, then it becomes really hard for students to be able to solve questions like these. So it's always good to know the background. It's always good to have tidbits of what these novels or what these important works are basically about. So even before we start looking at the passage, we'll first of all try understanding what this book is about. Now this book is a flawless result of Tamil literature, and the name of the work is Poonachi. Now, if you have ever read books like Animal Farm, Heart of a Dog, Jungle Books, Stuart Little, you would be very aware of the concept of this word called Anthropomorphism. I'll give you the spelling. The spelling is anthro, A-N-T-H-R-O, P-O-M-O-R-P-H-I-S-M. I'll write it for you if you want. It's anthro, A-N-T-H-R-O, M-O-R-P-H-I-S-M. Now you should have an understanding of words like these when you're looking at passages like these. So basically this word or this concept of anthropomorphism, basically this word or this very concept refers to animals or refers to novels where animals are ascribed with human behavior and characteristics. Okay, and Poonachi, this very work, also falls in this particular genre. I'll simplify it for you. There are certain set of works where animals are given human characteristics, where animals are given human qualities, where animals are given human emotions, where animals are given human feelings. That work or that concept is called that concept is known as anthropomorphism. Okay, where animals are ascribed with human behavior and characteristics, and this very work from Tamil literature, Poonachi, very much falls in that particular genre. Now, of course, the author is Murugaon, P. Murugaon, and P. Murugaon has successfully captured the essence of being a woman in the form of a goat. Her struggles and dreams represent the innocence of daughters in our society. And we see in the novel, as this goat, she grows old, the weight of responsibilities and expectations grows tenfolds from the people of the society, and how she sacrifices everything that's of her own, that's of hers, in order to subdue that burden. And this is very characteristic of what happens to Indian women. This is very characteristic of what happens to Indian daughters, where you see years of oppression, where you see years of repression, right? And these women, I'm not talking about any XYZ women, I'm talking about women from our own houses, or from our very own houses, about our mothers, about maybe if you guys are girls watching this video, all the daughters, years of oppression, years of repression, something that they just go through with silence. And Poonachi is all about that. This female goat is all about that silence, that repression that women of our society, especially I'm talking about Indian women here, go through all through their life. Okay, we see how she goes on sacrificing everything that's of hers. Okay, now also we also need to understand that this book majorly provides the insights of rural India. Okay, now this concept is also very important. a lot of things have changed in our places, in our society, but I did still I say that they're very much at superficial level. If you look at things deeply down there, uh, the modern India is still very much a part of rural India, and you see a lot of problems that persist in rural India, very much a part of the modern India as well. So this book majorly provides the insights of rural India with the perspective of goat, okay, and simultaneous representation of the scene where a farmer goes through an inevitable cycle of debt, hunger, crisis, and survival. Now, this book is an anthropomorphic account of a human girl who is here depicted as a black goat. So the story basically runs something like this. Once there was an old farmer from the rural area who took his goats in the field for herding, and while heading back, he saw a very large human-like man passing with a small bundle in his hands. The big black man, this big black man that we're talking about, he approached the old man and gave this small parcel to the man and told him that it is a small black goat who can give birth to 7 children, okay, 7 of his offsprings, which is a very rare, very unusual, very uncommon thing. Now this big black man told that his name was Bakasur. If you look at the meaning of the word Bakasur, Bakasur means the king of Asuras. Now when this older man, he brought that goat home, his wife, the old woman, she of course did not believe in the story and thought that the husband might just have stolen this malnutrition looking black goat and is now making up stories to get away with his crime. And that was the day when they finally named their goat as Poonachi. We must also learn that Poonachi, this work it's about a lot of things. It's about the transience of life. It's about the inequalities that thrive within the human society. It's about human beings. It's about other creatures which are too routine to be majestically tragic. It is also about the briefness of miracles turning into curses, and the inevitability of suffering, separation, and death. Through its humble cast of characters, this novel explores needs and instincts essential to all living creatures, be it hunger, be it safe, shelter, be it affection, be it love, be it any positive human emotion. And the translator of this work is basically the name of the translator who translated this work into English is N Kalyan Raman, very popular translator, who majestically summarizes the book in his own words. And he says that this very book makes us reflect on our own responses to hegemony and enslavement, selflessness, resistance, resignation, living and dying. Right, so a wonderful work to explore. Now let's look at the passage. So rule number 1, even before we start looking at the passage, we're first of all going to look at the questions that follow the passage. Question number 1 is, why is the writer fearful of writing about human beings? Okay, so we'll pay attention to something in relation to this, something in relation to the idea which talks about the fear of the writer, okay, on writing about human beings. Let's look at the options as well. A, it says the inability of humans to understand the emotions. B, the exploitation of the nature is the result of the inability of the humans to understand the emotions. It's emotions, there's some spelling mistake. The strict established conventions of the society, or all of the above. Don't you think that these two options look very similar to each other? Now we need to pay a lot of attention to questions like these, where we immediately find out that there are 2 or 3 options that are very similar to each other. Okay, that means that question is going to be little hard for us. Look at it, the inability of the humans to understand emotions. The exploitation of nature is the result of the inability of the humans to understand the emotions. So, very similar in context. So we'll be paying good attention to this question specifically. Question number 2, it asks us, what does the word hierarchy in the passage refer to? Now, we need to understand the connotated meaning of the word hierarchy here in reference to the passage, and this is something we can understand when we start looking at the passage. I won't say again it's a very easy question, because a lot of students will maybe identify the literal meaning of the word hierarchy, but that is something we don't need when we are looking at passages like these. We need to look at the reference of the passage and then try understanding what maybe the word must be about. Okay, let's look at it. Option number A, it says maybe it refers to the aristocratic classes. B, it says the people of the village where Poonachi lived. C, it refers to the powerful dominant conventions and system. And D, none of the above. Now look at the 4 options. They're not at all easy. Okay, they're not at all easy. Now if you do not understand the meaning of the word hierarchy in reference to the passage that is given to you, you will be stuck in a question like this. Okay, so pay very close attention to the word hierarchy when you're looking at this word hierarchy in your passage. Okay, question number 3, it asks us, why did Poonachi never felt at home with the old couple? Okay, option number A, it says because she was treated as a goat producing machine by humans. B, now do you see that these questions are also giving you some hints on what the passage must be about? So this is why question reading first becomes very, very important, because these questions in a way they give you a hint of what your passage will be about. A lot of times we might have our own interpretations, but the moment we start looking at these questions, our interpretations might change. So it becomes really, really important for us to look at these passages first, to look at these questions first, in order to get an idea, in order to get some hint on what this passage must be basically about. So coming back, it asks us, why did Poonachi never felt at home with old couple? You can identify a lot of things just from the options. These options, they throw a lot of hints. Okay, look at option number A. It says because she was treated as a goat producing machine by humans. B, it says because humans suffocated her. C, because humans never let her live with her head held up high. It's gonna be head held, H-E-L-D, held, some spelling mistake. And D, because humans exploited her. Now look at these 4 options again. Don't you think that they're very similar in nature? Again, we need to, when we're reading our passage, we need to be extra careful. Look at these options. Treated as a goat producing machine, humans suffocated her, exploited her, never let her live. All of these, they look quite similar to each other. What becomes important here? Our passage reading becomes very important here. Careful passage reading. Okay, what is the tone of the passage? Colloquial, unreliable, omniscient, or commiserating? Again, a question based on these important words. Now if you don't know the meaning of these words, again you will be stuck. So in order to be able to solve questions like this, you need to have your ideas on these words quite clear. Okay, now question number 5, it asks us, which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? So we're going to find an option that favors what maybe the author wants to say. Okay, so there again you need to be extra careful. You need to find out the similarity in ideas of the author and the question here. If you fail to do so, again you will be stuck in this question. Okay, let's look at the options first. Option number A, it tells us that humans must not exploit animals. Humans must understand the emotions of animals. Humans must introspect their own self to comprehend the world around, or women must fight against any injustice. Again, don't you think that these options are quite similar in nature, at least these two? So again, I personally feel that these questions might confuse you. So in order to be able to solve questions like these, you need to be very careful, majorly, ultimately, because ultimately they're about understanding what the passage must be talking about. So I've repeated this thing in numerous times that we're not going to understand the passage literally. We're just going to look at the heart and the head of the passage and then try solving the questions that follow. Okay, let's begin looking at the passage. This passage, first of all, is going to be in plain basic English, right? We're just going to give it a quick read and then we'll try understanding what the questions have in for us. How long can an untold story rest in deep slumber? Slumber is sleep. Within the dormant seat, I'm fearful of writing about humans, even more fearful of writing about gods. I can write about demons, perhaps. I am even used to a bit of demonic life. I could make it an accomplishment here. Yes, let me write about animals. There are only 5 species of animals, which I am deeply familiar. Of them, dogs and cats are meant for poetry. It is forbidden to write about cows or pigs. That leaves only goats and sheep. Goats are problem-free, harmless, and above all, energetic. A story needs narrative pace. Therefore, I have chosen to write about goats. So we get the first hint here that the writer is going to talk about goats here. The story of Poonachi, the little orphan goat. So we also come to know that the goat is an orphan goat. As you follow her story from forest to habitation, independence to motherhood, you recognize in its significant moments the depth and magnitude of your own fears and longings, fueled by the instinct for survival that animates all life. Masterly and nuanced, Perumal Murugan's tale forces us reflect on our own responses to hierarchy and ownership, selflessness and appetite, love and desire, living and dying. These lines are very important because it gives us the essence, it gives us the core idea of what the passage is going to be about. Forces us to reflect on our own responses to hierarchy and ownership, selflessness and appetite, love and desire, living and dying. Poonachi senses she belongs elsewhere and not with the old couple, caring as they were. So we come to know maybe the old couple might be quite caring, but Poonachi never felt at home even with them. Why? Let's look at it. The forest and the trees seemed miraculous to Poonachi. She saw hair, field rats, and snakes that ran away petrified. Petrified means scared on seeing her. Though afraid, she was also avid. It was a strange feeling, as though she had arrived in a real home. She walked up to a few trees and rubbed her body against a trunk. She develops a strong dislike for lambs who keep their heads down even when they're not grazing or drinking water. Very important lines. She develops a strong dislike. So we this dislike, this very word dislike, it also gives us an idea of what Poonachi had in her mind or how she viewed the world. Okay, things like these should be outrightly marked, because things like these are the only things where you're going to get your answers. She develops a strong dislike for lambs who keep their heads down even when they are not grazing or drinking water. Can you call it living when you live without looking at anything but the ground? Unless we look up, how can we see the sky? Do you understand? Do you look at this line? Can you call it living when you live without looking at anything but the ground? Unless we look up, how can we see the sky? Poonachi survives and observes the world around her unfold with keen eyes, where animals have to breed to fuel the lives of people. So here, by this line we understand, what do human beings do? A lot of exploitation to these animals. There's a sweet interlude when Poonachi meets and falls in love with Pooan, but no matter how much love and affection she gets from the old couple, they don't know about her feelings. Okay, there was something like this in relation to it. and she has to mate with an old ram by design and with no emotion, leaving her feel violated. This is the story of every woman, right? Poonachi becomes a goat producing machine, talked about a magical ability to produce 7 goat kids, and suffering. Magical ability. How can it be magical ability, right? Magical ability to produce 7 goat kids and suffering emotional loss when her children are taken away from her. Poonachi's union with Puan brings a violent aftermath and marks her destiny as well. Poonachi is every woman at the bottom of every social, political and cultural ladder, where she has no say in what she wants and believes, and who must breathe with air and the threat of violence. It is the story of every woman who cannot have her own desires, but whose life story has been made more of tears and broken dreams. So Poonachi is the story of every woman. Poonachi's feelings and emotions, they are the emotions and feelings of every woman. Okay, the established conventions of the society, the established system of the society, what it does to a woman, years of oppression, years of repression. Yeah. Okay, now let's look at the question. Question number 1, it says, why is the writer fearful of writing about humans? Now let's look at these 4 options that we have in front of us. Number 1, the inability of humans to understand the emotions. Number 2, the exploitation of the nature is the result of the inability of the humans to understand the emotions. It's going to be emotions here. Point number C, the strict established conventions of the society, or D, all of the above. Now don't you think that these 2 options are quite similar in nature? When you think that all the options look quite similar to each other, what is the number 1 thing that you should be doing? You should be checking, you should be going back and checking in that if all the options are already there in the passage. So if they're already there in the passage, our option is going to be D. Our answer is going to be D, that is all of the above. Now let's go back and look at it. Now number 1, it says yes, the inability of the humans to understand the emotions. They don't know about her feelings and she has to mate with an old ram. So yes, this very much explains the first option. Option number 1 is there, so we confirmed A is right. B, the exploitation of the nature is the result of the inability of humans to understand the emotions. We also see this very word, leaving her feel violated. Okay, now here when the writer is talking about the exploitation of nature, he is not solely talking about the nature, the trees, the plants that you see there, but nature on a whole. That also includes humans, that also includes animals. So yes, this answer is also right. This is also very much there. See, in passages like this, especially passages from the field of literature, you're not gonna get things directly. There are a lot of connotated statements and you need to understand the connotation of these words. If you don't understand that, you'll be stuck. So these passages must not be read randomly, but they should be read with all your heart and head. If you're doing that, of course you'll be able to figure out your answers, but if you fail to do so, you'll be marking anything. Okay, and look at these options. These are not easy options. Maybe the passage is easy, maybe the question is easy, but if you look at the options here, option co is quite difficult. The option status is quite difficult. So we need to filter out the right and wrong options when we're looking at passages like these. The strict established conventions of the society. Chalo, let's look at this if that's also there. Poonachi is every woman at the bottom of every social, political and cultural ladder where she has no say. So this no say very much defines that the society is strict. The order of the society is strict. I'm again and again saying that there won't be direct statements. You need to understand the core of the passage. If you fail to understand that, you'll be stuck. Okay? So coming back here, yes, all of the above is going to be the right answer, because this was also there, this was also there, this was also there. So in any case, option D is the right answer. Now moving on, it asks us, what does the word hierarchy in the passage referred to? Okay, option number A, it says the aristocratic classes. B, it says the people of the village where Poonachi lived. Now see, not at all. Okay, so we're gonna eliminate this immediately. The powerful dominant of conventions and system, okay, this can be there, or this could also be the right answer, but none of the above. Again, we're going to eliminate two options. Okay, elimination and filtration is very important when you're looking at passage type questions. Okay, hierarchy. If you look at the word hierarchy again, let's go back and try reading the word hierarchy, or try reading the statement. Tail forces us to reflect on our responses to hierarchy and ownership. See, hierarchy, basically if you get a word like hierarchy in general refers to not only, imagine this is a triangle. Now here in this triangle, poor people live here, lower middle class people live here, middle class people live here, average middle class, upper middle class people live here, right? Rich people here, okay, and then rich people with a lot of political powers here in this section. So this is what a hierarchy, okay? People going down, people in ascending or people in descending orders. So this hierarchy, this very word hierarchy here refers to people who make the conventions, who make the regulations of the society. And these are not only those people who are rich in nature, but also people with a lot of political and cultural powers, people who are sitting directly here. So if you encounter the word hierarchy anywhere, hierarchy is not just the aristocratic means rich, not just the rich people, but also the powerful dominant conventions and system. So if they're powerful, automatically they are rich. We're going to look at the more strengthening option. Aristocratic, okay, this is also okay, but this is more okay. Why? Because it mentions dominant conventions and system. Who makes this system? These rich powerful people with a lot of political power. Okay, in India, Modi will make all the decisions. Modi has more power than Mukesh Ambani. Even if Mukesh Ambani has more money, but Modi is more powerful. Why? Because Modi is governing the system of the society. So hierarchy is that, the powerful dominant conventions and system. Conventions are the rules and regulations. Now looking at question number 3, it asks us, why did Poonachi never felt at home with the old couple? A, because she was treated as a goat producing machine by humans. B, because humans suffocated her. C, because humans never let her live with her head held, it's gonna be held, H-E-L-D, held up high, or because humans exploited her. See, the question says, why did Poonachi never felt at home with the old couple? This I understand, that she was a growth producing machine, okay. Because human beings suffocated her, again okay. Exploited her, chalo ye bhi theek hai. No, but if you look at what Poonachi actually thought, if you read these lines, she develops a strong dislike for lambs who keep their heads down even when they're not grazing or drinking water. Can you call it living? When you live without looking at anything but the ground, unless we look up, how can we see the sky? Do you get the code? Do you get the essence of the passage here? So these were the direct statements from Poonachi's head, and we need to understand this, that because humans never let her live with her head held up high. So this is going to be the right answer. This is okay. The writer was telling this. Suffocated her, of course okay. Exploited her, okay. The moment you see these two options, you should be immediately filtering them out because they're very obvious in nature. We need to look at the strength of the options. And again and again repeating the same thing. So she was a goat producing machine by humans. This was okay, but again you have to remember that Poonachi was an animal, and this is the perspective of the writer. But if you look at the direct perspective of the Poonachi's perspective of life or about life was this, that everybody should be allowed to live with their heads held up high. Okay, so we're going to look at the perspective of Poonachi and not the perspective of the writer here directly. Okay, what is the tone of the passage? Colloquial, unreliable, omniscient, or commiserating? It's going to be commiserating. The writer is not at all unreliable here, because unreliable narrator is a narrator who doesn't take any responsibility. Omniscient, no, not at all. Commiserating basically means commiserating means lamentful, pitiful, sad tone. And of course, if you ever happen to read the story, or even if you look at the passage, it very much tells us that it's a very the tone is quite sad. Okay, it's a very pitiful tone that the writer uses to explain what Poonachi went through, and this is a very obvious tone. So commiserating, if you know the meaning of the word commiserating, which is lamentful, you know that commiserating is going to be the right answer. Alright, now moving on. Next question, it asks us, which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? So we're going to look at a question that is an option that is going to be very much in favor with what the writer thinks about animals. Humans must not exploit animals. A. Point number B. Humans must understand the emotions of animals. Now, don't you think again these are quite similar in nature? Women must fight against any injustice. Alright, this was the basic idea because this work is quite allegorical. Humans must introspect their own self to comprehend the world around. Now let's go back and let's look at this line. This tale forces us reflect our own responses to hierarchy, ownership, selflessness, appetite, love, desire, living, dying. Again, if you go back, if you look at these options again, these are quite obvious things again. Not exploit animals, must understand the emotions. Okay, we're gonna immediately filter them out because they're very obvious. We're gonna mark something that is completely in sync with the writer's thoughts. Humans must introspect their own self to comprehend the world. Comprehend means to understand the world. Why are we marking this answer? This is the correct answer. Why are we marking it? Because this line very much explains this entire idea that the tale forces us to reflect our own responses to hierarchy and ownership, selflessness and appetite, love and desire, living and dying. This is why I repeated this line 2 times, so that you know that this entire set of things, this is something you can achieve only when you understand your own self, when you comprehend your own self, when you introspect, when you contemplate your own idea of self. So when you understand that, okay, that is the first thing, that is the first step to understand yourself. The moment you understand yourself, of course you will understand you should not exploit the animals. Humans must not understand the emotions of the other, or any other thing there. It's only when you understand the self, after that only you can understand the rest of the things. So option number C is going to be the most favorable answer, right? You see the havoc that COVID-19 has caused to us. It's happening. Why is it happening? Because we never introspected our own self. We never introspected our own ideas of treating animals. You see every article in the newspaper today. What are these articles in these newspapers about? Every print media, what is it talking about? Our own mistreatment of animals. And in a way, we are all suffering. This great havoc is all a result of the way how we treated animals in our own way. And now it's the time to introspect, it's the time to contemplate, right? And this is what the writer here is talking about. So you introspect yourself first. That is your step number 1. Once you do that, only then you understand, okay, you should not exploit the animals, you should understand the emotions of the others, or women, or that is another different kind of option, but women also in general must fight against any injustice. So this is the step number 1. Unless you reach here, how will you reach the other side of steps that are there? So we need to understand that we must introspect our own sense of self. So this is going to be the right answer, right? Alright guys, I'll wind up the class here. For any queries, you may reach us out directly. I'll see you later in my next lecture. Take care.